What do Blue Marvel, Sentry, and Voyager all have in common, besides being incredibly powerful Marvel Comics characters? They've all been around in Marvel Comics lore for decades, and yet none of the heroes or villains in the universe remember them. What's that all about? Let's talk about it. First, thanks for watching JLS Comics. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. I do upload videos just like this every single week. Alright, let's jump into our story. Blue Marvel was created by an actor and comic book writer named Kevin Griveau. It's a character, an idea that he's had floating around in his head since he was a kid, and the story is a fascinating one on multiple levels. There were characters to look up to back in the 1950s and 60s like Superman and Captain America, but they were accepted as heroes by citizens in story and readers alike. They didn't have social issues to deal with. So Kevin created Adam in the same vein, but yet his story sets him apart in both ugly and extremely heroic ways. In a couple different interviews, Griveau describes this best. It's the story of Marvel's first black superhero. He was the most powerful and the most popular superhero around for a period of 3 or 4 years back in the late 50s, early 60s. Think of how pre-Civil War Captain America was lauded in the Marvel Universe, or how Superman is hailed in Metropolis or throughout the DC Universe. And that was the popular status that the Blue Marvel enjoyed during this period. There is a caveat to this, however, as Kevin goes on. Would Blue Marvel be hailed as a hero, or would he be an object of fear given a lot of misconceptions about blacks throughout our history in this country? All I had to do is give the story a historical context in pre-civil rights America, end quote. Indeed, the civil rights backdrop would come to be a massive part of his story, which is this. Adam Bernard Brashear was born in Chicago, Illinois, and growing up, Adam was a powerful force, excelling on the football field. In 1950, Adam enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, and as a PFC was sent abroad to fight in the Korean War, where he first met his good friend Sergeant Connor Sims. In the war, he saved the lives of 3 white soldiers, including Sims, and he earned 2 silver stars for the act. He was a force on the football field and the battlefield, and he was also a powerful force in the classroom. When Adam returned from his tour of duty, he ended up graduating from Cornell University with a PhD in theoretical physics and a master's in electrical engineering, while also playing as an All-American fullback with Big Red. That was 1954, a year after the Korean War ended. Then Adam was assigned to a government science project called Project Perseus. The goal of Project Perseus was to tap into and access extra-dimensional energies and antimatter drawn from the negative zone. And so Adam built a massive device called a negative reactor. From the initial test run demonstration, Adam's good friend from Army Intelligence now, Connor Sims, was at the laboratory to oversee it since it was Army Intel that had funded this project. There was an accident and the machine overloaded and the laboratory exploded. Connor was disintegrated, seemingly killed when the antimatter particles washed over him. However, when they passed through Adam, he absorbed the energy into himself. He became the success of his project as Adam was turned into a living, stable antimatter reactor. Sims, however, did survive the blast. Adam tried to stabilize his unstable, fluctuating atoms in his body by bringing him to his secret base. In the 1960s, Adam's scientific knowledge led him to many discoveries and patents, and he earned a vast amount of wealth from this. And through these financial means, he was able to build himself an undersea headquarters, a base of operations deep in the Marianas Trench that he calls Kadesh Base, the same place that he brought Connor right after the accident happened. Kadesh is a word from an ancient Canaanite word meaning holy, and the name Adam is of course a biblical name referring to the first man. And Brashear could be a reference to a man who also broke barriers as the US Navy's first master diver, Carl Brashear. It gives Adam Brashear's name a lot of significance. Much later, members of the KKK murdered Sims' brother, and his view of the world became one of anger and sadness, of mistrust and fear. So Sims' mental state devolved, even as he transformed through his unstable and still fluctuating body into a villain called Anti-Man. As Blue Marvel, Adam helped out America, saving it time and again. He pushed a meteor out of the way, lifted the USS Enterprise aircraft carrier right out of the water, and brought it home. He threw a hydrogen bomb out of the way before it detonated. As Duggan told Tony Stark, in the present day, the 40s had Captain America, the 50s had Marvel Boy, the early 60s were Blue Marvels. But then when Anti-Man started his final fight, a masked Blue Marvel and Anti-Man fought in the streets, a furious, mighty battle of fists and morals. Anti-Man wanted to beat society into caring, but Blue Marvel said we can't force this through terrorism. We have to let it happen naturally, and by the power of our example, not through fear. That's what heroes do. After the battle with Anti-Man, Blue Marvel Marvel was victorious, but his costume was ripped and torn and in tatters, his face mask was shredded, and the world saw that the man under the cowl was a black man. Kevin Graveau described what happened at this time. He wore a costume that completely covered his entire body, so no one knew what he looked like underneath. But when it was discovered that he was actually a black man, he was asked to cease operating as a hero and retire by President John F. Kennedy. The reason being that at the time, Kennedy and his brother Bobby were desperately trying to push forth civil rights, and they knew that if the world found out that Blue Marvel, a being of incalculable power, was actually a Negro, that would set their civil rights plan back, maybe even kill it altogether. And they knew that if America was to move forward and evolve socially, that could not happen. Not wanting to upset the apple cart and realizing how important this was, the Blue Marvel complied with the president's executive order and stands down, end quote. So this powerful hero was saving the world but forced to fight racism, inequality, and prejudice at the same time, to battle villains and the real menace of hatred. And so in an already fractured society, JFK told him it still wasn't the right time to fight this fight. Only time can educate, and she is not on our side, Kennedy told him as they stood in his office. The government appreciated what he had done, but they had no way to stop him if they needed to. The question of what would happen if this incredibly powerful person joined the marches in the street. What if he fought alongside the Black Panthers? What would they do? They let fear and ignorance inform their decision. Kennedy awarded Blue Marvel a Presidential Medal of Freedom as a thank you, even as he requested Adam to retire. And Adam complied, believing he was doing the right thing. Adam wasn't retreating, he wasn't backing down, it was a deliberate tactical withdrawal. Adam was a Marine, and he was following the orders of his superior. But for this to be believable, Adam was given one last mission, which was to save the Earth from an alien invasion. And so they told the world that Adam had died in space on this journey, and then they erased his official record. And during this time, Adam continued to use his scientific and technological prowess to carve out a new life. For 5 decades, 50 years, half a century, Blue Marvel remained hidden and dormant, sidelined. His powers allowed him to age slowly, countering the effects of molecular degradation. In fact, in Ultimates, we learn that Adam in the present is 87 years old. At first, Adam was angry that he had to do this, so he flew to the moon, and on the moon he tossed away his Medal of Freedom. And there he happened to run into a cosmic being named Uatu the Watcher, and he had a talk with him about his problems and his powers. And while talking, the two repelled an alien invasion from attacking Earth, and they saved the planet that no one but they would ever know. And during this time period, Adam worked as a professor in the physics department at the University of Maryland. It's when he also met his wife, Candace Brashear, who turned out to be an FBI agent named Marlene, aka Agent 314, who had been sent to monitor him. She fell in love with Adam though, and they ended up marrying and having kids together, Max, Kevin, and Adrian Brashear. Adam's first son was Kevin, and he was born in 1970 and grew up to be a partner to his dad. However, he was lost into the negative zone. Though he wasn't Blue Marvel, Adam still fought as Doc Brashear against Deathwalkers, the Technocracy, and against Dr. Scorpion, which is when they lost Kevin. And losing Kevin was traumatic for the Brashears, and when this happened, his second son Max started to devolve himself, and he ultimately becoming a supervillain named Dr. Positron. His daughter Adrian grew up and found herself working in science as well, ending up at Project Pegasus on ISO 8 and Cosmic Cube research. So as the years churned on into decades, the world forgot about the legend of Blue Marvel, until Anti-Man returned. On his return, Anti-Man attacked New York City, where he managed to defeat Iron Man, Yellow Jacket, the Wasp, Black Widow, Wonder Woman, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Sentry, and Ares, the God of War. This team was so incredibly powerful, and so for the Anti-Man to be able to take them on meant that his power level was entirely on another level. But he was on a time clock, and when he reached 0, Anti-Man disintegrated into nothingness, and as he was disappearing, he said, "If Blue Marvel couldn't stop me, what chance have any of you?" Tony Stark, Iron Man, was intrigued by this. Who is this Blue Marvel he was speaking of? As director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he started researching and digging into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files and those of the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the Avengers, and an alphabet soup of intelligence outfits, but he came up with nothing. There was no record of the Blue Marvel. However, he was eventually able to uncover the executive order and the Blue Marvel protocols. Stark ended up following the trail to Adam's house and spoke with Adam's wife. When Marlene told Adam her true identity and that Tony had stopped by, he flew away and went back to the moon to talk to Uatu. And Uatu reminded Adam that even with JFK's edict to stand down, he protected the world because it was the right thing to do. And with Anti-Man back, he had to make that same choice again. So Adam flew back to Earth and met up with Stark, who was on a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, as they'd just picked up antimatter spikes in the Sahara Desert where Anti-Man re-emerged. So Adam met with the team. Iron Man said he apologized for the egregious sanctions imposed on him and already moved to have them lifted, but Adam snapped back. "Save your guilt and your lamentations for sins you didn't commit. I don't want your sympathy nor your reparations. We move move on. Adam wanted to blow up Ant-Man, but the Avengers said it was too risky, that it could destroy the world, and so they flew after him to stop him. In the fight with the Avengers, Adam punched the Sentry, the man with the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, so hard he flew into orbit. But then the Sentry flew down, re-entering the atmosphere, and broke the sound barrier as he crashed down on Blue Marvel, which finally stopped him. They put him in stasis and brought Adam's wife to see him. But as Ant-Man showed up, Adam busted out of the chamber. He then flew out to meet the Avengers and took command of the field, telling each member what to do so they could stop Ant-Man and end the negative energy leaks in the atmosphere. And as they started working, there was a massive blinding light as Ant-Man's energy exploded. But sadly, Adam's wife died. Adam rose up, furious, and ended it. He flew up into space and dissipated Ant-Man in a burst of energy. At the end of the miniseries, after Stark offered him a spot on the Avengers, Adam went home and found a letter from his wife. It said that through everything, the downtime, the fighting, the adversity, when they buried him and he had to put on a new mask, Adam was always her hero. Adam's next mission came after another talk at Kadash Base with Uatu the Watcher, who reminded him to not give in and retire again, that he had a second chance and he shouldn't let himself down. So as klaxons blared, Adam went to Uzbekistan to help the Winter Guard stop the evil King Hyperion. During Fear itself, Adam was away exploring the negative zone, the source of his powers, and when he got back, a submarine had crashed into and launched itself into the exterior of Kadash Base. The Chinese and Americans were fighting over the incident, but the sub turned out to be owned by Thor's uncle, the god of fear, a villain named Serpent. Later, as the Prime Avengers team went off-world to deal with Ex-Nihilus and the Builders, Thanos and his Black Order took the opportunity to attack Earth, and his first emissaries of death were Proxima, Midnight, and Black Dwarf. So Luke Cage brought together a new team of Avengers like Spectrum, Superior Spider-Man, White Tiger, and She-Hulk, and in the battle, Spectrum was struck down with Proxima's spear. Meanwhile, Uatu had come down from the blue area of the moon to visit Blue Marvel at his undersea base, which by now Adam had started living in full time. And while they were talking, a level 7 threat indicator sounded, and a Shuma Gorath rose up from the earth in the middle of the city and became level 8. Now, inspired by Uatu, Blue Marvel showed up and flew right through Shuma Gorath's face. Adam then used his antimatter projection powers to give Spectrum additional photons to fight the antimatter photons that were killing her and draining her energy. And that's how Blue Marvel saved the life of Monica Rambeau, or Spectrum if you're nasty. It was then that they became romantically interested in each other. Their extra-dimensional powers were connected, and that's important. That's also how Blue Marvel came to be a mighty Avenger. Brashear also put up some of his patent money to fund the team. Later, someone was trying to access another dimension called the Neutral Zone, somewhere where positive and negative matter could coexist. Who was this? It was Dr. Positron Max Brashear. By this time, Adam's son Max had fully become a villain. His brother Kevin was still trapped in the Neutral Zone, and he was trying to get him out, which was on the surface not a bad thing. However, he was working with a European terrorist network to fund the project, so yeah, he was bad. Kevin did come out of Positron's portal, but he was a massive unstable monster. Adam had to take out his own son to save the solar system. After Adam's friend Uatu was killed during Original Sin, Blue Marvel went to the moon. Adam learned of his friend Uatu's death from Reed Richards just as he met Ulana the Watcher, Uatu's next of kin. Ulana told him that Uatu was caught between worlds, between watching and not doing enough, to complying with his people and to dissenting. And it was the sameness that drew the two friends together. Adam then vowed to find Uatu's killer, but Ulana revealed that Uatu had a child, and Adam was the godfather. Later, Adam found an element called neutronium, an exo-element often called ISO 8, which is what Adrian would be studying. In the lead up to 2015's line-wide Secret Wars event, as incursions slammed Earths together and entire universes were destroyed, Blue Marvel assisted the mighty Avengers in helping to stop the Illuminati from killing other planets to save their own. And then after Secret Wars, when Earth 616 came back together, Blue Marvel was recruited to a new team formed in the honor of the fallen Ultimate Earth 1610 universe. This new team was called the Ultimates. It was Blue Marvel, Spectrum, Miss America, Captain Marvel, and Black Panther. It's a team noted for having no white men on it. Blue Marvel is the one who got Galactus' incubator from deep space for the Ultimates. And when Galactus came out of the incubator, he was no longer the Devourer of Worlds, he was now Lifebringer, the Seeder of Worlds, and the Ultimates helped him with his new directives. Adam traveled with the team through exospace in the Neutral Zone where they found Ant-Man again, and they all went to the outside of the Omniverse to assess damage to the omniversal structure to eternity. During 2015's Contest of Champions, White Fox called on the Ultimates to help find Gunnar, as they had experienced with pocket realms and alternate universes. So Adam and the team went to the Grandmaster and he told them it had something to do with ISO 8, the element that Brashear had found. Brashear grabbed the ISO sphere, but Maestro sent them back home devoid of memories. During the second superhero civil war, a new Inhuman emerged named Ulysses with the power to see the future. Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, used this to predict Thanos' attack on Project Pegasus where Adrian was working on the Cosmic Cube. And in the battle, Jim Rhodes died and Jen Walters was put in a coma. Afterwards, at the medical facility, Adam was consoling Monica, reminding her that they weren't gods, they were human, it was okay to feel, and they kissed. That's when Stark flew in, blaming Carol and the Ultimates, and the world, once again, was forced to choose sides. In 1998, Adam had gone to Machu Picchu with his son Kevin, where they were investigating something called the Infinite. If the Infinite manifested on Earth due to its size, it would destroy the entire planet. So in the present, the Inhuman Ulysses had gotten a vision about this Infinite and brought it to Blue Marvel as a dire warning. This gave Blue Marvel, Pym, and the Ultimates team enough time to build a Pym particle machine to shrink the Infinite down to the size of a human, so it ended up being a good thing. But America Chavez didn't like the predictive Minority Report style police that they'd become, and she fought with the team, going to blows with Blue Marvel in the process. Then Thanos used Ant-Man to break out of his containment and the team had to fight him again. And because of where the team stood during Civil War, the government disbanded Carol's Ultimates after Civil War. Adam and Monica then invited Carol to investigate a semi-sentient nebula with them since they were now without a team, but they were a new couple. But Carol still had Alpha Flight, so she declined the offer. And that's how the Ultimates would eventually get rolled into Alpha Flight as well, on Alpha Flight space station. But soon after this, the Ultimates reformed, this time by the hand of Galactus, who needed a new team, new heralds to fight against the ultimate darkness. And America Chavez is now the leader of this Ultimates team. They still weren't sanctioned by the US government. They had an NSA team called the Troubleshooters tracking them to make sure that they didn't reform. So this time they were on Ta-2, Galactus' ship, while studying the last remnants of a sentient cosmic cube containing the Ghost Shaper. And remember I said that Blue Marvel and Spectrum are connected? In issue 6 of Ultimates 2, one of the Troubleshooters named Simon became a powerful cosmic entity in the employ of the First Firmament, Eternity's precursor, and thus was too powerful. Well, Adam said that the photon is its own antiparticle, and with his antimatter body, Blue Marvel and Spectrum were able to merge into a much more powerful form, and only then were they able to take him down. At the start of Secret Empire, Blue Marvel was on the Alpha Flight space station and flew out with the team to stop the Chitauri invasion, and got stuck outside the planetary defense shield. And then during Eternity War on Counter-Earth, where the Maker and High Evolutionary were, Blue Marvel punched a Hulk from a dead reality so hard he knocked him out with one punch. Then Blue Marvel was called to bring in Dr. Doom. Some terrorists had blown up a space station while disguised as Latvians, so everyone thought that Doom was behind the attack. And when the station exploded, it ripped into space and time and created a black hole. The mercenary Taskmaster shot Doom in retaliation. LaFay tried to tell Blue Marvel that Doom was innocent, and that's when Doom shot Blue Marvel and knocked him out cold. He later brought Doom to the house of a Latvian scientist as people like King the Conqueror and Silver Sable had showed up, so Adam had to fight with them as well. And Doom was, unfortunately, able to escape from Blue Marvel's custody. Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, along with Blue Marvel, were able to get Doom to help them work on a way to fix the black hole problem. When Blue Marvel went inside the black hole, though, he lost his powers until a Dr. Octopus from another dimension appeared on orders from his Dr. Doom, who, on his world, was a good guy. And he had negative energy bombs, which would hopefully close the black hole once detonated. And as they got ready to blow it up, the Brood attacked. Otto died, but the Blue Marvel escaped through the singularity on the other side, still alive. In another story, Jimmy Woo was researching the Masked Raider, who was wearing something called the Eternity Mask, and so he recruited Blue Marvel and Night Thrasher to reform a very old team called the 3X's. He was also part of the final charge against the Kotati during the Empire event of 2020, and so he remains, still very active, still helping to save the Earth one thread at a time. So how best to summarize Blue Marvel? Again, we turn to Blue Marvel's creator for the best description of him. He says, he's a man caught between worlds. On one hand, he's a superhero who fights evil and injustice in all its myriad forms, but on the other hand, he's a black man who has to be careful about how he fights the injustice done to his own people. And later, he's not a hero for blacks, but a hero for everybody. That presents a particular burden for him because he sees no end to the oppression of his people in sight, and something needs to be done. But if he does it as a black man, he immediately becomes an object of fear, and to have people afraid of him just because he's a hero of color, thinking he's going to violently fight against the white establishment, is a horrific thought for him. That kind of internal struggle is great fun to write. And with that, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and you'll be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.